This is Phil Dixon, baseball historian, and I thought I'd go live tonight. We got crazy weather coming into Kansas City, so I thought I'd just go live and talk to you guys. It's a little bit awfully humid here, so that means it's going to be stormy, and after a while, and I can see the darkness and the clouds off in the distance. But I do have time enough to do some live here. So what I'd like to talk to you about is these Negro League tribute games. Do you have any idea how they got started? Who had the first one? Let me give you a little history because you know about the latest and the greatest, but often they don't give you the history of how things got started. And with me, I've been fortunate enough to be around for 40 some odd years, and I've seen a lot, and I've heard a lot, and experienced a lot. So I'm going to give you some history here today. Okay, so first of all, the first Negro League tribute game ever done was done July 29th, 1989, and it was in Kansas City, and it was part of the Old Timers game. And at that particular time, I was assistant director of public relations with the Kansas City Royals, and I talked them into inviting a group of Negro Leaguers back to do this tribute game in connection with the Old Timers game that was sponsored by Equitable at that time. And so Equitable picked up the fee, and we brought in some guys. And I'm going to go over that list in a minute. It was an interesting day, and that was the beginning of it all, 1989. Now, prior to that, back in the 1960, I guess 65, when Satchel Paige he pitched his 3 innings for the Kansas City Athletics, they did do something similar at that particular time. They brought back a few guys, mostly the Kansas City guys. There were some other people, I saw they were trying to get Oscar Heavy Johnson. I don't even know if he was still alive then, but they were trying to get him there. And now I saw somebody mentioning Dobie Moore. But it ended up being pretty much local guys. Buck O'Neill, Connie Johnson, Buller Rogan was there. And these were guys that came the night that Satchel Paige pitched. And then to jump forward, if this would have been in the 70s, A. Ray Smith, when Satchel Paige was down there doing some promotion with the Tulsa Oilers, A. Ray Smith put together a union, and I know Coop Papa Bell attended that. I saw his pictures. Slick Surratt, another guy out of Kansas City, I saw his pictures. So I saw pictures from the event, and it was all centered around Satchel Paige. Okay, so that was the 70s, late 70s. So jump forward, nothing happened in between there, and I know in 1980 I really began to push the Negro Leagues hard, and I think 1980 was the year that I released that 36-inch panoramic of the first, what they call Color World Series in 1924. First, we'll just call it a World Series because it was a Major League World Series. Remember, the Negro Leagues, Major Leagues. Don't forget that ever. Don't forget that. But they labeled it a Color World Series. So I guess there was a White World Series, but they don't say that. So I don't use the Color World Series. So that was Kansas City Monarchs against Hilldale. And so I released that panoramic, actually a couple of panoramics during that time in 1980. So at that time, I'm 23 years old, and I'm trying my hardest to promote the Negro Leagues. I had no backing, no financial backing. I was doing it all out of my own pocket and my own love for the game. So anyway, 1987, I went to work for the Kansas City Royals. Now I will say 1985, Lucille Bluford at the Kansas City Call. I wanted to go out to the ballpark more often, and I told her I'd write some articles if she'd give me a press pass. So I started writing for the Kansas City Call. I'll have to share that with you too. I wrote a number of articles here in the local Kansas City Call newspaper related to the Negro Leagues and Major League Baseball. I was covering Major League Baseball that year. Of course, the Royals ended up going to the World Series, so I'm at the World Series. That's a whole experience of its own self. So, but anyway, I went to work for the Royals, and I worked as assistant director of PR. Of course, I come there with that Negro League experience and that background, knowing a lot of people. And so I was able to convince the management of the Royals that this would be a great idea. And so I actually have one of the programs here. This is the program from the event that we did with the Equitable Old Timers there. And I'll tell you who we had for that event. Of course, we had our Kansas City guys, which would have been Connie Johnson at that time, Jim Lamarck. These were a couple of Monarchs. But we were able to get some other people. Of course, Jesse Williams, who was with the Monarchs in '45, he was there, and of course Buck O'Neill. So that was our kind of our Kansas City crew. But we were able to get Gene Baker. Gene Baker was doing scouting at that time for the Pittsburgh Pirates. I used to see him all the time. He was an advanced scout. Would come in and sit in the press box. We had some wonderful conversations. And so anyway, got on the phone, got Gene Baker there. We had Lyman Bostock Sr., of course, his son, Lyman Bostock, played for the Angels, and I can tell you a lot about him when he was murdered tragically in I guess it was 77, maybe 78, or it could have been late 77, but when he passed away, I did write a letter to his wife, and she sent me back a beautiful thing on the funeral home stationery. I have that in my collection. Of course, we had Jimmy Crutchfield. Jimmy Crutchfield came out of Chicago, and Jimmy Crutchfield had a marvelous background playing with the Birmingham Black Barons, of course, the Pittsburgh Crawfords. Most people know him from that. Spent a little brief time with the American Giants. He was there. And then we had Lorenzo Piper Davis. We brought him up from Birmingham, Alabama. Piper Davis, the first African-American signed by the Boston Red Sox, never made it up. He was quite a player in the Pacific Coast League. Oh, now we did have another Monarch. I almost forgot about him, George Giles. George Giles, who came to the Monarchs in 1927. So we had George Giles, and of course, his grandson was actually playing in the majors at that time, Brian Giles. And so if you go look for Brian Giles, now there were two Brian Giles, so you got to make sure you get the black Brian Giles. And let's see, we had Gabby Kemp, James Gabby Kemp. He was the manager of the Atlanta Black Crackers in 1938. And this guy was a Morris Brown graduate, but he got sick and couldn't make it. So he didn't make it, and I think he died shortly just thereafter. And then, of course, we had Ray Nobley, Raphael Ray Nobley, who actually played for the New York Cubans. We had him. And then we had Othello Renfro, came from Atlanta. So we had Othello Renfro. Chico. Interesting thing about Chico. Chico, when he was playing for the Kansas City Monarchs, he married my cousin, Juanita Peeler. And she was from Iowa, Kansas, and they would go down and visit. They may have gotten married in Iowa, Kansas. I'm not sure, but he was actually married to Juanita, so I talked to him all the time. I could talk to him about family things. So that was the original group that we bought in. And, of course, they had the old-timers here, the American League and the National League old-timers. And Hank Aaron was there, Ed Bailey, Ernie Banks, Joe Black. Joe Black was real instrumental. He was there. He was with the Negro Leaguers and the National Leaguers. Cesar Cedeno, Nate Cobra was there, Tommy Davis, Bob Gibson, Billy Herman, Russ Meyer, Charlie Neal was there, Claude Osteen, Jimmy Pearsall, Johnny Padres, Ken Reitz, and we had Ray Boone was there, Lou Boudreau, who was Satchel Paige's manager when he came up with the Cleveland in '47. We had Larry Doby was there, Bobby Dorr, Raleigh Fingers, Jim Gentile, Dave May, of course John Mayberry. He was a local guy, but he was with the American Leaguers, so he was there. Fred Patek was there. Johnny Oates. I don't know if you remember Johnny Oates, caught for Philadelphia, Baltimore. He was there. Cookie Rojas. He was around Kansas City. He was there. Joe Rudy, Roy Sievers, Joe Scott, and Louis Tion. And while they were there, we coordinated so that there was an unveiling of the Satchel Paige Monument, where Satchel Paige is buried in Forest Lawn Cemetery. And I had a heavy role in that as well. And if you ever look on the back of that monument, there's a little poetic saying about Satchel Paige being born in Mobile, Alabama, and how his career was so long. And it's a little poetic saying. I probably should remember it by heart because I'm the one who wrote it, and it's on the back of his monument. But just for history's sake, I have to go back and tell people these things because there's a lot of interesting things that are going on with the Negro Leagues now, but unfortunately, people don't know the history. We have the museum in Kansas City. People don't know the history of how the museum got started. I have to talk about that sometime. So it's some good stuff, and I didn't want to take too much of your time today, but I just wanted to let you know some of those things. And I do see a few people on here. I see Scott Whitty, and thanks, Scott, for joining in tonight. Let's see. I don't know if I see anybody else here. Do I see anybody else here? Catching up the live. Let's see. There's a Belt Loops Matter. I'm not sure who that is, but anyway, I just see a few names. Anyway, I'm just talking baseball history for real, and this is history in our time. Of course, the Negro League history is history from another generation, but there's a lot of history that we're missing because people aren't educating people on the facts. So I just wanted to do that tonight. And once again, we're getting ready to get a storm in Kansas City, so you can kind of see it's getting darker as I speak. But I want to thank everybody for chiming in. And please go out and subscribe so you can catch my lives. I'm going to give a lot of unique stories and information. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I just sit down and think about things that people might want to hear. So thanks for chiming in tonight. I'm getting ready to sign off. And so thank you very much. And until next time, good night.